a little history on these. The patch field we just acquired, it's close to 18 acres. It's located in Wood County as well, but as far north of Wood County as you can get. It's behind the factory in Northwood, the tomato factory. And it has been, so here's a little view of our farm at the factory, and this little slap right here, you can see it. I'm sorry, this one is patched. Okay, so that's what it looks like there. So it's surrounded by some more conventional ground over here. It has been beans for the last 3 years, I believe. So plenty of chemical influences and iron running across that field. So but these fields here that are highlighted, we farm all these. So these are all ours. So these are organic. So you can see this little patch right here isn't, and then this over here is not. So, and this little place in the middle. So there's a little patchy field. Anyway, so obviously it's good ground, but it needs help just because of the farming that's, it's been going through. And we got some old time farmers on that. He's, doesn't know why they use it, but they've just been using it. So they use it, they no rhyme or reason to it. And then over here, this is kind of what the field looks like. This little house here, nobody's living in it now, and there's barn. But anyway, so what we decided to do with this field to catch up to date is we split it between 2 cover crop mixes. Here's the other little field here. So CC10, which is the diverse max, and then the CC2, which is the value max mix. And these are obviously the headlands or whatever. So when we planted this field, I wanted to see what we got our bang for our buck versus, spending a little more, and maybe we do need a little more for what we're trying to get out of it. I was looking for maybe some scavengers and some compaction. Didn't really see a lot of weeds in this field, but I'm sure there's plenty of chemical help in there for that. But and then some of the grasses, I think Cass would agree, they weren't coming up like they should have probably on either side of this field. So anyway, but you can kind of see what's in them. So the mix, the value mix, it's got ryegrass, clover, some radish, and some rape. And then the diverse max has some other legumes in there. So it's got some mung beans and some clover, some oats actually, which the oats is what I seen suffering at first. They weren't coming through, which might be because of whatever type of herbicides they had on there last year or something. So, but anyway, so that's what we're kind of trying to accomplish here on this field is, how much do we have to pay and what's going to work, because it's all about working in the long run, and we're not going to have those results obviously for a little while. But so this was the mix. This is kind of pretty. This was taken, I think, just over a month ago, maybe. So it was still pretty green, and still had, no, this one was taken, I'm sorry, this one was taken in September. So it's really green, but you could see some of the stuff was starting to die off a little bit, but this is flourished. Now this is the diverse max. This isn't the other side, which had the negative, kind of a negative effect on the field. Actually, it was very sparse. It wasn't as full and flourished as this field or this side of the field was. And we let's see if I can get this one. Oh, that's a shot. I'm not ready for that one yet. So yeah, so Cassie and them were out there getting data. I didn't put those in here, Cassie, because I didn't know if you wanted to show those or whatever. I did for the shop, but anyway, they were out here, and Cassie as a witness can see that definitely a little more bang for the buck on the diverse side.
Oh yeah, you're gonna see that in the data we have today.
Yeah. So because you did do biomass samples from here.
Correct.
As well. Okay. So I would say, but looking at both of them, and I don't have pictures, but you take my word for it, I'm probably as entry level about any of this stuff and farming and all that. But I mean, I've been here 10 years, but it all didn't take off very quickly. Like it didn't come up quick on either side. And I'm going to have to say that was probably because of it being conventionally farmed, beans 3 times in a row, and then whatever type of residuals are left on that one. So, and then we had, so this is the shop. This is right behind our shop. Just this little perfectly square chunk of field here, close to 18 acres. All this around here is certified organic, and we farm all that as well. And
what's this one called, Bridget, just for the notes?
Shop
field. Got it.
Yeah. 212 is the number. So this has been farmed organically since they've been farming organically. So this piece is well established. It's got great soil, great dirt. It's had compost on it quite a few times in its rotation of 4 years. Cover crops, a good rotation for just crops in general. And then irrigation is pretty good. There's a little spot right here, which in the pictures is why. So that it just, for whatever reason, water. It doesn't drain as well right here. And we have heavy thistle pressure in this field. So the reason that we are trying to put in these different mixes is more for thistle and some foxtail in this field. So so anyway, moving on to it. So this is the mix. And I actually made this blend myself, trying to see on reading different studies on thistle and what type of soil type we have, and with our rotation, what kind of benefits we could get. This is a little mix I came up with. So it's got some winter peas in it, cowpeas, buckwheat, flax, annual ryegrass, sorghum Sudan, which you'll see in the pictures, and then sun hemp, which, that's not a lot of sun hemp in there, but it was, you could really see it coming through, which I was a little concerned at first because it was smaller, and then it just really took off. And then the radish and some turnips, some clover, and then balanza clover. Again, a small amount in the balanza in there. So this little mix here is hopefully something to suppress the thistle in this field, because it really is a nice piece of ground, but we do lose a little of our yield off of it because of the thistle pressure, either trying to chop them down or when we have small grains. So so here is a picture of this picture on the right is what we took of the drone of the shop field. And this was after we chopped it, and it was on this side, and then what we had left. So we chopped half the field and kept the other half green. You can see that there. And then on this image, I believe one of y'all are collecting some samples or doing a count of the what plants and species and all that you're looking in a small area, I'm assuming, Cassie, or how you guys did that. So so when the girls were out, and then let's see this one, and this is what it looked like in the spring when it was first coming up. I just wanted to go work backwards from the comparison, only because you can just see, you could see some thistle in there. And I wanted to get some pictures of that you seen. There was still some pressure, but you see everything wasn't coming up as quickly as, not spring, I should say. It was, when was this planted? July 27th. So it was probably a month into that. Let's see what we have here. Now we have, oh, I did the shop already. Eric's. So here's Eric's, field 201, 68 acres. And this poor piece of dirt, I tell you, weeds weren't even growing in it. It looked pathetic. This part back here we have in conservation. This was farmed entirely for a while, and they enrolled that, I don't know, maybe 10 years ago or something like that. This is surrounded by conventional ground. It was farmed conventionally. This piece here actually did have beans on it, and believe it or not, they had beans on it for 5 years. The compaction on this ground is terrible. So the standing water, it's just, this is going to need some help. You see where it's like at too. Right here is the turnpike. It's going to be, there's going to be some issues with this field, I think, for a long term. So we're trying to do some rescues to it as quickly as we can. And let's see. So I was like trying to see what we could put in there to break up that compaction, obviously. So radish, and then we did some sorghum Sudan grass, again, just trying to scavenge some of that's in there, the residuals and the chemicals or whatever that may be in there. And then obviously, like I said, the compaction, and it was it was so sketchy when it was growing. It was like there would be 4 by 4 feet of nothing, and then there would be, a few little plants peeking up, and then they're like, okay, maybe it's going to take off now. And then it was just not very good, but I'm sure it was very happy for what we put in it. We did 20 pounds to the acre of the sorghum Sudan grass, and then 2 pounds to the acre of the radish. So out of all the pictures, I thought this would be funny. I wanted to show the radishes we pulled out of the fields. And this itty bitty one came out of Eric's at first. And then this one was the shop's. So that just kind of shows you like how pathetic this was. Because I don't know if it has to do with the chemicals that are on it, or just how heavily farmed it was. Conventionally.
That was the field where we were at in September, and there were like radishes with hardly any tuber, and they were already bolting.
Yeah.
It's pretty sad.
So you could, radishes, they'll overwinter. We had the radishes back in the shop a couple years ago, then we put it on for cover. They overwintered. They're not a hard thing to grow. They don't take much. And like I said, this little guy here is this poor little thing here. He was like, it's trying so hard, but yeah. So anyway, and then I figured, okay, so those are the 3 fields that we have. So what are we going to do next? Right. So Cassie did some biomass and some soil test samples. We are going to put compost on these fields. I don't know how much yet. I'm guessing probably 20 ton of the acre. We would probably try to get that compost on probably in the fall of next year. It just kind of depends on what we're going to do for crop rotation, which is the next thing. Lou's looking at that, which is going to depend on soil tests as well, and just basic surveying the field after these cover crops. I mean, I wanted to try to do something like sunflowers because it's not, so Eric's field is transitioning and then patch field's transitioning. And I'm trying to find a market for conventional sunflowers just to scavenge some more of that out of that field. But I don't want to plant them just to plant them. I'm going to have to get some kind of cash crop off of that. But that's what we're looking at. If not, I'll probably put it to rye for seed and just use conventional rye for cover crop. But I don't think it's ready for oats. I could do oats for conventional too. I just don't think it would do well. Because as far as Eric's goes, patch maybe, but I think I would. The buckwheat we didn't get chopped in time, and there's a few things. So I'm expecting some of that to come back up. So I don't want to have all that in the oats if we do them. So either gonna go to sunflowers and try to sell those for conventional or transitional, and then for oil seed, or we'll try to do some rye in it. So those are my two options right now, which could change, but that's about it. That's what we have for the plan. So we're waiting for a few more results on that. I don't have, so Lou took the computer that had most of the drone coverage on it. We call it like our burner laptop when we have to open up something that we downloaded for like manuals and stuff for equipment. So it doesn't have the best security on that laptop. And he actually took it to try to get some other stuff downloaded on it that he needed for the combine. So but that has the really cool ones. But I can email all that footage to you because we actually were putting together a timeline on that. But I couldn't have it in Drive because it didn't have the right security on it. So I couldn't share it with the company Drive. They wouldn't appreciate that very much. So, but anyway, that's what I have there. I'm open for questions or anything. If anybody I didn't even look to see if anybody had any comments or anything. So
We had a few suggestions come through while you were chatting. I think you may have already shared the seeds per acre for each of the seeds in the cover crop mix at an earlier meeting. I'm not sure though.
Yeah, so Eric's field 201 that had the 20 pounds of sorghum Sudan and the 2 pounds of radish. Hang on here, I have the other ones. I could put this screen up. And we did use an inoculant on those covers as well that had the peas in them and the vetch, just so everybody knows that. So
I just mentioned the seeds per acre because a lot of people don't understand the seed side difference between radish.
yeah.
You know, so when you talk a percentage, it seems like it's little, but there's 200,000 seeds per pound. So, you know,
Yes.
putting that on a chart, if we're going to share it, might help
Okay.
newbies.
Okay, so the diverse max, we were at 45 pounds per acre, which is the CC10. And then the value max, we were at 20 pounds the acre, and that was CC2. So that's the one that split on the patch field. And then the mix, the Hirzel mix or whatever we wanted to call it, we were 40 pounds of the acre on that one. And that's the field at the shop.
Bridget, is it possible to get the detailed, maybe not too detailed, but like the management history? I know you said, you know, some of these fields were in soybeans for 3 years and one was in for 5 years, but it might be interesting to know exactly what they sprayed and how that might differentially affect your different species and your mixes.
Yeah, which we have to do that because they're transitioning to organic anyway. So
Right.
I have to get the spray records.
Right.
I do know the one person passed away that had the patch field, but his brother was farming it, and they were working on getting that, but definitely. And then Eric's, yeah, I do have that information. I just have to, I'll scan it and put it in if you guys want to share a drive or something, or send it to Cassie or something like that, and she could put it together for the histories. Yeah, because Eric's, I would say, was abused the most as far as inputs, and equipment ran over it. We've patch field is next to our field, so we've kind of, you know, seen what they were doing because we were farming that field. So, but yeah, definitely, I have to have that for organic certification for the transition anyway. So I'll definitely share that information with you.
And one other, just a question on Eric's field, because it was so close to the interstate, I guess it's I-80, right?
Yeah.
Is the drainage affected, you know, by the interstate construction and such? It looked like it could be compacted from multiple reasons there, just in your picture.
Yeah, so the turnpike actually goes above from the map, so so the turnpike goes over that field. But in the back, if I can get back to that slide, in the back of that field is where we have 20 some acres that's in conservation because of Packer Creek that's back there. It floods. You can't farm it back there. I mean, it's pretty pathetic, but but I don't know if that would, all the construction or whatever you're saying around there, that could possibly be it. I'd like to get a history on that field. I mean, that has been a part of this farm for a really long time. It was just rented out and farmed conventionally. So I don't know, like the structures that were around it, how long, you know, if that's what affected it. Now that creek, Packer Creek, they call it, that runs, that's a lot further than what we thought. I don't know the exact like miles or whatever that it goes, but it goes all the way, I think, through it's like Genoa. There's quite a few little places that it gets to before it empties off. So I had mentioned this to Lou before. I said it'd be pretty cool to like collect the water quality off of that, because that would be a prime example of, you know, the runoff and what's coming off of that. So, but I would definitely suggest that we did that too. And that may be something you guys want to. That I think we're gonna do the 20-25 ton of compost to that. Like I said, but I probably don't think it'll get on until the fall. Because I'm gonna probably bet that we're gonna end up putting sunflowers on there if I can get a market for them. So, and if they grow, they grow, but we'll have to try something. So.
If
Anybody
that's
else?
if that's herbicide damage, I'd be really interested in like what compost might do for that, because I know with like glyphosate, for instance, it really takes that organic matter to get the things, the processes in the soil, you need to get them working to kind of get that, I don't know what you call it, broken down and no longer killing things. So I'm thinking it would be really cool to set up a trial where we look at varying rates. I don't know if there's recommendations out there, but I know I've heard other people ask for this kind of information. Like, I'm transitioning, this has seen a lot of herbicides. You know, at what rate can I apply these things? Does it help? And at what rate would I need to apply it?
Right.
It just seems like a nice thing maybe to try on those two transitioning pieces.
Yeah, and that's for sure. And I mean, Eric's is big enough, we could do 5 different rates if we wanted to. We did like, well, I think it was somebody through OSU, Lou said, where they did the 7.5 ton and then the 15 ton and then the 20 ton. to the acre, and then obviously did the 20 ton every 4 years, the 10 ton every other, or the 15 ton every other, and the 10 ton once a year, and the 7.5 ton once a year. But I can't remember who he said did that study.
It could have been Alan Sundemeyer. I remember when we were setting up the Hirzel site, we're using the 20 ton because that's what Uncle John, or I don't know whether he was your uncle or what, had worked out. It was quite expensive for transition if you looked at it economically. Yeah, we didn't do the rates. I wasn't involved in that, but I could see Alan Sundemeyer. Of course, he's retired now, but that would be really interesting to see that data.
Okay. And Lou may or may not be listening right now. I don't know. He's not in the office, but that's something, again, we can probably visit and see. Now with our compost, again, on some of this ground, like the shop ground that's been organic forever, probably had, at least 3 applications every 4 years for the compost on it. And then cover crops, that field's not going to need it as bad as Eric. So it's like, okay, so then you just kind of do a maintenance, and then you're like, okay, you're trying to get your, micronutrients out of it, or whatever, or continue with the carbon, trying to boost the organic matter on it. But I don't know how, I consider the compost as an amendment, obviously not a fertilizer, but I mean, it doesn't just amend the soil. I mean, there's, other, you could use it as a mulch to suppress weeds. Obviously you wouldn't do it on our standard, but I'm just saying a lot of, we've done that with tomato plants. We put rice hulls in between the rows. We put compost in between the rows, and then we put like wood chips to see what suppressed. And actually the compost suppressed the weeds better than the rice hulls did and the wood chips did. I mean, so we're playing all these little things all the time, with the compost. But I think the benefits of compost, as Cassie was mentioning, tying up, the crap that's in there that plants don't need or want when we're trying to switch that over to organic, that's a big deal. That would save more than I think anybody, trying to, when they're transitioning over. I don't know if it takes 20 ton of the acre to do that, but, maybe that's what we would do at 5 ton. This, I don't know if you guys are familiar with, like Midwest Bio, Ed Blosser, he does the, humus, or is how he promotes his compost. But, on his vegetable growers that he supplies to, they're only putting 4-5 ton to the acre on it, every other year, or 2 ton a year or something like that. So, and they're getting vegetables out of it. And, but it don't probably pencil out for them, to put any more than that on it. I don't know. So it's just, but with the cost of all these other inputs right now, and diesel and everything else, I mean, this is huge to save some money on inputs, and then running it over. And then I was down at Mount Hope, and I don't know if I mentioned this to Cassie or not, but we're not trying to get 180 bushel corn organically. We're not trying to do any of that goodness. We're trying to get as much out of it as we can with as little as possible. As little touching it, as little running a machine over it, as little organically, because then when is it not sustainable anymore? You know what I mean? Like, okay, you're growing organic and that's great, and you're not spraying a bunch of stuff on there, but how much diesel are you burning? How much iron are you running over the field? How much, I mean, that all is, that all has to complete into that whole mindset. And I think more people are coming back to that, versus, oh yeah, I got, 180 bushel corn, this is all I put on it, and then I put this input. And then even like the synthetics that they're adding into compost now, there's so many out there to, speed up the process of the compost, so it's ready in 5 months, and your microbial activity. I mean, I don't think it's necessary. I think you just go back to basics with this, but I know I'm rambling, and I'm on a soapbox sometimes, but that's just how I think everybody's looking at it differently. Obviously a cost is something that everybody has to look at, especially now, but I don't think compost is treated fairly is what I'm trying to say. I think it has way more benefits than we could probably ever track or imagine. And then plus just the fact that you're diverting that stuff from the landfill. I mean, like I said, it all kind of ties in together. So
Let's see if I can find some info on like compost rates, and maybe there's some stuff out there already, but I think maybe that's a good thing to maybe a good thread to follow.
yeah. There was so the US Composting Council, we're a member of that through, I think I seen Emily, it was the Ohio Recycling and Compost Association. It was on Columbus, I think a month ago. But anyway, they have a lot of information on there for members, and I was looking at some of it yesterday. And they have different rates. And I think it was a study out of University of Wisconsin, and that they just completed in August of 2021. And they did with row crops, and they did it with organic, and they did it conventional. They even put compost on conventional, and they did different rates of that. And then how the crops yield obviously is always important to everybody, but how it actually changed the soil, and what it did absorb out of the soil. So I'll probably email that to you, Cassie, if you want to see that. But I was reading through that yesterday, and then I didn't realize, but most of the compost that is I don't want to say manufactured or whatever, and the US goes to like sports fields and things, which I was kind of appalled, but then I thought, well, not everybody has a food waste compost either, you know what I mean? So it's probably just the yard waste, leaf waste stuff that municipalities, and they're probably going back going, okay, you want us to compost this, you need to put it somewhere. So they're probably putting it all over the fields. But I thought, well, that's kind of disappointing, but then it's not like the nutrient dense compost like that we make. Like we're probably more of a premium product because of our carbon to nitrogen ratio and our particle size, and then obviously the nutrients that are in it with the food waste. So, but yeah, so I thought that was kind of interesting when I was reading on that yesterday.
Well, thanks, Bridget. I can share like just quick the biomass, but before we move on, I wondered if anyone else had like questions or suggestions for like as we move forward on this, something you'd like to see measured that wasn't on that list, something you'd like to see trialed, if anything popped into your head while she was presenting, I'd be interested in hearing that. And if you think of something great later, you can share it later.
So Bridget, I loved what you said about the creek, like thinking about systems, how like it would have been really great to do water quality sampling prior to the cover cropping and then watch it over time. But I think it would be good at any point to just kind of like check the creek and then check it ongoing as that management changes over there. There's so many factors going into the water quality stuff, but I know a bunch of that was done in the Sugar Creek watershed a while ago. I'm sure you could speak to that, Deb, and that was super illuminating. So I love the systems thinking beyond the field.
Yeah, I noted as well, Julia, that was cool. Yeah, I'm trying to think of, I would love to volunteer my son, Jed, who's doing water quality work in Northwest Ohio. But I know he's a very, very busy boy, but I will talk to him and see if maybe there's some relatively easy things you guys could do that might not meet scientific publication standards, but would certainly be informative and could lead to further studies. So I will take responsibility to talk to him about that. And I've been trying to get him to work with the Hirzels for a long time as an organic site in their network. So maybe this could be the beginnings of that.
Rachel, Amber, Courtney, any thoughts on that? You guys deal with a lot of water quality in that neck of the woods.
I think it would be really cool to see the water quality. Sorry, I just stepped back in, but I think that would be something really cool to see. I know it was said if we could have started it early on to see how those cover crops affected it, but I think that would be something really cool that you could bring into it.
Could talk to Steve Lyons about maybe getting some groundwater wells installed, or I know we're doing some similar sampling on another project I'm on. So,
Yeah, I definitely think it could be something that we could bring into it.
mhm.
I'm sorry. That's in Ottawa County. And I mean, that creek, we're supposed to be involved in some, I don't know, they're doing something else just on the other side of that creek. And
So we may have data already.
yeah, that's what I can email. His name's Mike. I'll email him and see if there's something, and then we can have like a baseline of what it was then.
Yeah,
Oh, sweet.
that would be awesome. Well, if anyone else has something else, hopefully we'll have a little time at the end, but I'm going to go ahead and just share what the small bit of data I was able to throw together. First I wanted to show you a picture of what Eric's field looked like when we went out there. We did not take biomass samples here, and I think you can see why. So there was not much there to sample. It had just been plowed, but even when I was out there in September with Brian, there was just very little growing on this field. It was a sad field, as Bridget said. This is the shop field, just a couple of pictures I threw on here. The first one was in September, and then this one was when we were there and did the sampling in October. So it had a little frost, but still in good shape. We could still kind of see the plants and get some ideas. So what we did is we took little squares and put them in the field. We split the field up into sections, and we took several little squares. Was very happy to have some people with me who could ID the weeds and versus the cover crop species, because there were quite a few cover crop species, particularly in that diverse max mix in the patch and field. So this is just a really quick and dirty summary about what we saw there. This is the shop field, and we split it into 3 sections. And I just did a quick little pie chart. Blue is the cover crop we saw growing. Orange is the weeds, and gray is the bare ground. So I don't know if maybe some species had died back at this point, but we did see quite a bit of bare ground, and we saw a lot of thistle. So I don't know if the cover was a little better earlier in the year, but well, actually I know that it wasn't. I remember seeing some big patches of thistle even when we were there in September. So I would say it's not doing a great job on the smothering, unfortunately. Sorry about that. And then we did measure the biomass too. So you can kind of see it correlates a little bit with the bare ground, which would be expected. A little less biomass, the more bare ground there is.
Well, and thistle is so pernicious. So
Yes.
imagine how the thistle would be if the cover crop hadn't happened.
Exactly. It'd probably be a big field of thistle. So it's good. I'm sure it helped, but it was not totally out competing it. So this is Patchen. I loved this field. This is so interesting. I couldn't stop taking pictures along the divide between the 2 mixes. I think what really helped this diverse max, which is on the left side, is this buckwheat just came up all over the place. And we saw very little weeds there. Both times I was there, I saw very few weeds on that portion of it. I didn't put a picture in, but I suspect there might have been a little drift going on the right-hand side. It's a little closer to one of those conventional fields, and I saw some discoloration and leaves, but I'm not 100% sure that's what's going on. So this one's a little more interesting. You can see there's a huge difference in the two treatments. So this would be the diverse mix, and this would be the economy mix that had a few less species in it. So it'll be really interesting to run the numbers on this and see, you know, in terms of reduced tillage and management of weeds, if this indeed does pay out. But we absolutely did see a difference. So just a quick run through there. And then the total biomass was a lot higher on this other side as well.
But that total biomass is mostly weeds.
It could be, right, yeah.
Well, I
And
mean, it is.
yeah,
according to your
yeah,
pie
you
chart.
can, right, exactly. But it's not bare ground. I don't know which is better.
The weeds are creating quite a bit of biomass too.
Mhm, exactly, yeah. It's a lot of lamb's quarter in this field, if I remember right. I can check real quick. But I didn't see as many thistle. The thistle was really bad in that shop field though, unfortunately. And I mean, that's not an uncommon problem. So, you know, if we can turn this into looking at different ways to maybe manage thistle, I think that would be a win for this project. Yeah, lamb's quarter, chickweed, mallow, vetch. But I will say the weeds were a lot healthier on the economy mix side. And they were kind of struggling to get through on the diverse mix side. That's all I had. I'm going to stop sharing unless somebody has a question on any of these.
So you'll continue the same treatments with the addition of compost application this coming and this year's our 2023 fall or summer, Bridget. So we're going to be able to follow this through time.
Yeah. Again, we're gonna treat this like a 4-year rotation. Like, I mean, so it's gonna get composted. We're gonna try to get it into our normal crop rotation. We're gonna try to move it along and see, see where it's failing at and what it needs. So I will say with the thistle on the field and the shop, it was stunted for a while. And then once and then it all of a sudden it just took off. The thistle did again. So it was, the cover crops were out competing it for a little while, and then unfortunately it did take off. But
You chopped that, right? Did that kind of create a window for it? Give it some sunlight?
I think so, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Like I said, part of that field does hold water a little bit, and that's primarily where the thistle kind of hangs out. So, but we put compost on it, like that's the healthiest of all of them. So maybe we have to make it sick so the thistle. I don't know. You know what I mean? I just don't like, it's so annoying that you think, oh God, and when I seen it was started back, I was like very excited, and I was like, oh my God, maybe we're onto something here. And then
Well, and Bridget, this was full of calcium. So like, I know like grazing isn't part of your rotation, but like there are some creatures who would love to like gobble up your thistle and benefit from that nutrient and then move on. It's
She
like,
says, bring them over.
right, I know. If my sheep weren't so wild, we might have to try that. But like, yeah, it's interesting because it's nutritive. It's just like not where we wanted the nutrients to go.
Yeah. Yeah. And, it doesn't like, I mean, there's patches of it, but it grows so weird. It almost looks like when you're either dragging some kind of equipment through there or something, it like drags it with it. It's just like, it's just different the way it grows. You just can't get a handle on it, but oh well, that's why.
Yeah, there were like patches. There was nothing, and then there was like this huge patch of thistle.
Yep.
Which is indicative of the way it spreads. Right?
Do you guys have barley in your rotation?
No, we do not. I don't have a market for it, so organic barley. If we did, then we would. But even like for feed, moving it for feed, there's not very many places that will pay for it, any different. Then we'd have to keep it separate. And so we were trying to raise some for malting for a couple of the brewers around here, but again, we'd be organic, so we have that little bit of a premium price on it, and they weren't going for that. So I did hear of there's actually a conventional grower up in Michigan, but he plants barley along his ditches because he swears that it's good for filtering and scavenging chemicals and stuff that go into his ditches. He's been doing it for like 10 years. So, and then he just chops it and then reseeds and chops it and reseeds. So, but
Deb, are you asking the barley question from it's an early harvest and maybe before thistle goes to seed that you get?
Yeah, I'm remembering, Brian, we didn't design the experiment, but when Bob and I started using barley out at West Badger, I remember the one field at the far end had thistle in it and it just disappeared. And I just loved barley. It did not, unfortunately, did not take care of giant ragweed, but again, it wasn't a designed experiment, but it really was a nice addition to our rotation. And of course, living in a dairy county, you could make the argument, and Ed Snavely is the barley man in the organic world now, Bridget. And of course, he's feeding it to he's actually replaced corn. He has dropped corn out of his rotation almost completely and is replacing it with barley. And giant ragweed is not the nightmare it used to be for him and that it was for us. We did joint research on that one together. So if you don't have that, feel grateful. But I would, yeah, I know if I were you guys, based on my experience, I understand, obviously the economics, but it could be helpful in some way, maybe even as an additional cover crop or something, or like Brian says, you're harvesting it before the thistle goes to seed.
I guess I guess the other thing that somewhat interests me in this thistle conversation is that if we do have something that controls thistle, whether it's a mechanical or plant-based or whatever, do you begin to write prescriptions or, like if you're seeding this cover crop, do you add another seed that only gets spread in that section when you're planting cover crop, or do you up your rate, or what kind of practice in doing some type of a pre-mapping of the field you might do to innovate within the organic, using an organic control means.
Almost precision farming in a sense, but biological precision. That could be very interesting.
I mean, if the water quality associates ran drones over, would there be a time of year we'd run drone over and kind of just map where the thistles are in this field, and to begin to look to see whether there's certain practices that you only implement in that section of the field, because Bridget was talking about, not running over the field as much, so maybe there's a practice you only do in those prescribed areas.
Brian, Emmy Renier, I think she's retired now. Is she,
Oh,
Cassie?
I don't
Does
think so. I think
Is she?
she's close though.
Okay, so we had a thistle problem, and she recommended buckwheat, just like heavy seeding of buckwheat, where you know how you can get multiple seedings out of one set of seed for buckwheat, and we saw that help over time, but I've never seen anything that could like you still have the window when you chop the buckwheat and reseed it. You know what I mean? And the subsequent seedings are never as thick as the first for some reason. So, because the bottom, you know how buckwheat matures, like
Mhm.
the top seeds are mature, but the bottom aren't. So, and you have to make a call, like you have to mow it at some point. But that was what she recommended. I feel like there was some research done on that in Canada that she shared with us at the time, but I don't know if you could spot seed the buckwheat inside of the other stuff, or how much work or how reasonable that would be for workflow, Bridget, but cool idea.
And that's something we can add into, I mean, we can try. I don't know if taking like a little, like the Polaris with a little spreader box on it and going out, you know what I mean? Like the least amount of going over it and just kind of spreading it over. But I mean, and like in the small grains, we see it coming up. We're out there and we're with the chopper and we're chopping these patches, trying to get them before they go to seed. And before you quit, it's not 18 acres anymore. It's 15, 14. But I mean, I like that idea though.
There was some buckwheat in that mix, right?
Yep, there is. Not as much as the one up in Patchfield though. Not nearly as much. But yeah, definitely good stuff there. I definitely am now intrigued in getting a hold of Mike at Ottawa County about that. The labs for that creek though, behind Eric's. Not to get off subject, but
It's not off subject.
It's not, it's not.
Yeah.
That would be awesome.
Mm.
Awesome. Even doing the real basic biological habitat indicators that the state EPA uses, and I guess the national too, which with a little bit of training, you guys, you could get the kids out doing, but it would be really nice to have some good data.
Well, we're about at the end of our time here. Oh, I wish I could tell you what our topic next month is going to be. I got a couple people I've asked, trying to get some folks that have done SARE projects, on-farm research projects to come in and talk about what they did and how they did it. So watch for an email.
But this was so great. Thank
This
you
was
so
pretty
much,
cool,
Bridget. Yeah, this
Thank
is
you.
super interesting.
And
I'm
thanks for everyone's ideas too. I think that's real helpful as we move forward.
A person, Cassie, you might keep in the queue or whatever, that could be a tremendous resource is Charlie Esselgroth.
Mm-hmm.
I know he did.
He was fun to talk to. I was at his
Oh,
table at the Steiner Summit.
He is so rich.
Mhm.
And Ed Snavely, I mean, some of the work that he's done on farm, he's
Mhm.
done a lot. And so Charlie and Ed both would be.
I actually reached out to Charlie. He was talking about adding solar panels to his farm the right way, and it was just a really interesting conversation. So
And he's talking about doing trees
Mhm.
in his paddocks, and
Yeah.
yeah.
And making it part of their rotation. Yeah, he would be great.
Yeah.
We'll see. But you got some ideas of people you'd like to hear from, like Deb just did, let us know. Well, we'll see who we can get on for next month.
Cassie, I'll add Ed to my list. to call.
Okay, awesome. That would be great.
Okay.
Cool.
Thank you, Bridget. Thank
Yes,
you,
thanks.
Cassie.
You.
All for organizing. It's great. Good use of my hour.
Me too. Yeah.
Thanks, everybody.
Let's see what's happening out
Me
there.
too, but I wish I could eat my peanut butter sandwich too. All right.
Cassie and Bridget, I'm gonna send these notes back by you because I don't think I got everything straight.
Cool.
Okay.
Thanks
All right.
a bunch.
Thanks, everyone. See you next
Happy
month.
holidays.
Yeah, same to you.
Yeah.